Greetings guys and welcome to another tier list. In this video we will take a look at every vehicle in the game, discuss a bit around its functionality and eventually rank it. As you already know, I am not a multiplayer guy, so our list will be mostly based on the campaigns we played the past few months. All these campaigns contain some really challenging missions which gave us an opportunity to try some units more and see how they perform in a difficult situation. So without further ado, let's start with the Grizzly Tanks. Grizzly Tanks seem like a balanced vehicle. Its stats are more on the average level, but their speed is what makes up for it. They move and attack very fast, making it a very mobile unit. For the most part, they can serve their role in early and medium game. In the late game or in tighter situations, they might seem a bit underpowered, but without having a high cost you can quickly get many of them and outnumber your opponent. Rhino Tanks on the other side are more like the true power of the Soviets. It's a vehicle that they need from early to late game, not only because it's actually that good, but also because the Soviets don't seem to have that many options. Slightly more expensive than the Grizzly, but maintaining solid speed and a lot more power and health, the value for price favors them a lot more than the Grizzly Tanks. As already known, Lasher Tanks are identical to Grizzlies. Considering that Yuri has many other units to rely on, they are often neglected. If we take into account their anti-air capabilities, I wouldn't rely much on the IFV. Their projectiles are quite weak and many times miss fast-moving targets, but their ability to merge with different infantries and boost their power can make the IFV truly shine. Those combinations can help it reach health promotion really fast, in which case it becomes a completely new unit. The damage increase the IFV gains is devastating against anything, which honestly seems like an oversight. A single IFV at elite status can easily deal with a group of Kirovs without any issues, while normally it takes hordes of units to bring these beasts down. Along with the terror drone, it is the fastest vehicle in the game and can also be used as a transportation for an engineer or a spy to a key location. Even though their damage depends on the distance of the target, flak trucks are reliable and effective when it comes to dealing with air targets. Instant damage, fast attack speed, and with an area of effect, they are really good against hordes of flying units, even if they attack from a distance. Needless to say, if it is visible, make sure to attack your targets at closer range. Whether it is to transferring units or perform aggressive assaults, the 5 available slots can help in developing different strategies. A common strategy the computer uses is by unleashing 5 engineers in your base. With a proper waypoint setup, you can execute this tactic with great precision. Despite the advantages it has over the IFV has a lot more potential. Against single flying targets, the Gattling Tank can outperform both the IFV and the flak truck, and unlike those two, it can also prove a lot more useful against buildings and perhaps vehicles once it reaches its full power and stays untargeted. An excellent choice to use with the tank bankers to enhance your anti-air defenses, since it becomes more effective than the Gattling cannon and requires no power. It's good against air targets and infantry, and under certain circumstances can perform well against structures and vehicles. As a siege unit, the V3 launcher deals quite good damage to structures, but the practicality of this unit is awful. It's a slow vehicle, it's very fragile, it attacks really slow, and the projectile travels quite slow as well, which makes it really hard to penetrate a base even with light defenses. Its extremely good range, which can also outrange the ground cannons, is perhaps the only positive asset that can make it a viable option. Not a very reliable unit, but sometimes it's all that you've got. Even though it doesn't have the long range of the V3 launcher, Magnetron is a lot more reliable. It deals an average damage to structures, but its attack cannot be blocked and can still outrange the enemy defenses, except the ground cannons. Therefore, a few of those can help you destroy structures fairly quickly. It cannot harm infantry at all, and all you can do to vehicles is to levitate them. This is where you have to micro them properly to make the best usage of them by throwing enemy vehicles into obstacles to destroy them. Not perhaps something you have time to mess around with, but sometimes it can help. They are ideal to use on naval battles where you can use the same tactic with a lot less effort. Cool design, exceptional animation, great movement, fitting voiceover and special attack, terror drones are quite a unique unit. Unlike the attack dogs, the terror drone will instantly kill any unit classified as an infantry, no questions asked. Regarding vehicles, the way they attack them is by infecting them and deal damage over time. Unless you deal with the infected vehicle either by repairing it or by destroying it, the terror drone will keep attacking and infecting any adjacent target. Even though they are very vulnerable to any source of damage, they are very fast, so a few of those will eventually infect a valid target. Overall, it's a very annoying unit to face that can cause many troubles, especially when combined with the Iron Curtain. For just 500 resources, they can certainly pay you off. The Chaos Drones can infect enemy units to turn them against their own, but in order to keep it going, the Chaos Drone must keep infecting them. Since it's very fragile, it can be quickly destroyed and the effects will only last for a few seconds. Sometimes it is enough to cause some chaos into the enemy army, but for the most time it doesn't really worth the effort, as you have to pay attention and micro them properly. I think they have their uses, but they really end up being extremely situational. The NightHawk Transport has mainly a supportive role. It's very vulnerable to any source of damage and quite ineffective at destroying anything but infantries. If it's idle while in mid-air, it will always land on its own, so you have to pay attention if you are carrying valuable units. It can be used instead of an amphibious transport to load some spice and use the chronosphere to the enemy base if a shipyard is not available. It's undetectable by the enemy radar, and the AI often loads Tanya with the con yard being their main target. Harriers are quite a difficult case, I would say. Their price is too high and they most likely will be destroyed after their attack without causing too much damage. However, since they fly very fast, if planned correctly and you are willing to spend many resources, Harriers in numbers can get the key structures down no matter the defenses the enemy has. In the hands of the computer, the Harriers are usually very annoying as the AI tends to use them constantly and target your vehicles. A human player user doesn't have time or the convenience to use it that frequently. Compared to Harriers, there is really nothing worse to say. Black Eagles are just a superior version of Harriers in every way. Better durability, better damage, and exactly the same cost. This is the part where it all goes wrong. Korea shouldn't replace the Harriers with the Black Eagles, but instead should allow both to be recruited and put a bigger cost to the Black Eagles. The current state is a win-win scenario for any player choosing Korea. The demolition track can prove either extremely effective or a total waste of resources. If the enemy is aware of it, it will probably counter it before it can cause too much damage. Plus there is always the risk of blowing your own base. In order to get the best of it, it really needs some kind of support which sometimes may not be available. Otherwise it can certainly get a lot of damage done. But 1500 resources for a suicidal unit seem quite a lot. Robot tanks is a vehicle which I used to mock, but the way the computer was using them made me change my mind. They carry some cool abilities which all of them combined can give you something more that other vehicles can't. They move fast, they hover, they are immune to mind control and radiation. Their mobility is excellent, which makes it extremely easy and pleasant to navigate them through the map, while they can also dodge tank cells if controlled properly. Any exposed key units such as miners will have an extremely hard time running away from them. They can aid in naval battles and can play an important role against units that use mind control. They can cross the sea, and if you are unprepared, they can enter your base from an undefended area and catch you off guard. They might not be the best units to go toe-to-toe with enemy vehicles as they are more vulnerable than the Grizzly Tanks, but they maintain the same firepower, and given their cheap production costs, they can become powerful in numbers. Remember that they shut down when there is no power or when the control center is destroyed. Just like their name implies, the tank destroyers are meant to deal with vehicles. Even though they deal quite heavy damage to them, the drawbacks they carry are too many to make them a viable option. They are slow, they can't attack while they move, they don't have a rotating turret, they can't harm infantry, they can't damage structures at all, and at the same time they are more expensive than the Grizzly Tanks. Even at elite rank where you would expect something more, they still can't hurt infantry or structures at all, which is truly outrageous. They might win a tank battle for you, but their role on the battlefield is extremely limited. The Mastermind is quite a durable vehicle, which has proven can control an unlimited amount of troops. It will automatically control any unit that comes within its range, which is quite helpful as it frees you from some micro-related steps and can quickly cause some chaos into the enemy army without trying much. You have to be careful though, since controlling more than 3 units at the same time will cause it to take damage over time. Definitely a dangerous vehicle to face, especially if you don't pay attention. Tesla Tank is one of the most versatile units in the game, since it can perform remarkably against all types of units. It's lethal against infantry, great against vehicles, and solid against structures. Shooting over walls can catch your opponent off guard, but can also be used as a strategy within your base. As great as it may sound, they are still overshadowed by the Rhino Tank. Its short range forces it to engage in close combat, and due to its average health, it usually can't survive matching battles. A good all-around vehicle, but requires a lot more attention to justify its price. The Mirage Tank is another great vehicle the allies have. Their ability to disguise can not only trick the human player, but also the computer, which usually ignores this kind of techniques. By placing some Mirage Tanks in key spots and keeping a fair distance, the AI will completely ignore them. Their instant and excellent damage, which cannot be dodged, puts enemy vehicles and infantry in great danger when encountering them. Even though they are not that durable, they are fast and kind of make up on that with their disguise. As long as they remain stable, the enemy won't be able to recognize them, so it's very easy to fall into an ambush. However, if you hover your mouse over them, the cursor will take the shape of an attack symbol, which is the easiest way to detect them. It's interesting to know that in the vanilla game, even if you knew a tree's actually a Mirage tank, the cursor would not change into an attack symbol, but it would show the forbidden symbol instead, and in that case, in order to attack, you had to use force fire. The Prism Tanks can make every game look a lot easier than it should. Even though they have an artillery role, they are great against infantry and light vehicles, and when promoted or are in great numbers, they can deal with anything else you throw at them. They are perhaps the most effective units to use against structures. Long range, powerful damage, shooting over walls, and an attack that is instant and can't be blocked. There's basically nothing to stop them from bringing a base down. They even have no blind spots, so the shroot doesn't prevent them from attacking something within the range. On a negative note, the Prism Tanks are a bit slow and extremely vulnerable to any source of damage. Literally any unit can destroy them. Just like with the IAV, the edit status of the Prism Tanks is on a completely different level. When you target units, the beam will jump to nearby targets, whether they are units or structures, and will basically obliterate anything around it. You don't really want to face that. It's a game-changing unit, which once it is produced en masse, it is almost impossible, especially for the AI, to counter it. Siege Choppers was a unit which I neglected in the official campaigns, but started to value them a lot in the fun main missions. It's a unit that I think the Soviets were missing badly, not only because V3 are incapable of doing what they should, but also because it's a flying unit which can help the Soviets gain map control. The whole deploy thing may be a bit troublesome, but as a hybrid unit they can really turn the tide of the game. Just their ability to drain energy and shut the enemy power down is enough to value this as a top tier unit. This ability is so overpowered that any exposed power structure can change everything in seconds. Other than that, the floating discs hold the advantages of a flying unit. With an average speed and health but quite good damage, floating discs in hordes can quickly destroy key structures in a base. Their ability to also steal cash is very useful. The Battle Fortress on its own is not that much of a unit, even though it can crush nearly all the vehicles in the game, including Allied and Soviet miners and even the Apocalypse tanks in seconds. It's definitely not something you would pay 2000 resources for. However, when combined with appropriate infantry, it can truly become an unstoppable force. Even the cheapest of the infantry, such as GIs and Guardian GIs, are already enough to make this vehicle a nightmare to your enemies. Unlike the IAV, the units inside the Battle Fortress maintain their weapon and therefore their damage. If the units inside the Battle Fortress are promoted, they will deal even more damage. The greatest part about the Battle Fortress is that the Allied have all the infantry they need to make this vehicle a killing machine. If the Battle Fortress was available to the Soviets, it would be simply wasted. Probably the most iconic unit in the game, Kirovs can eliminate entire bases. Very durable, very powerful, it takes no more than a few bombs to destroy even the sturdiest of structures. Considering that it is an extremely slow unit, their usefulness drops drastically if the opponent has prepared for it. Therefore, the global announcement kind of kills the biggest asset the Kirov would have, the element of surprise. In that case, the Kirov really starts to need a lot of support to invade a base. On the other hand, it can also be used as a support itself to distract the anti-air defenses and let other units, such as the V3 launcher or even better the Dreadnought, to hit its target. Regarding the missions we played, the computer always started with a well-defended base, which made the Kirov quite meaningless to use. Needless to say, even with the current scenario, the power of such a unit will put a lot of pressure to an opponent to balance their air and ground defenses, because there's no way you want this thing hovering over your base.
The appropriately named Apocalypse tank is war in a can. It can attack any ground or air targets and be expected to be the last unit standing.
The apocalypse has begun.
The Apocalypse tank is a powerful vehicle with exceptional damage, admirable durability, but terrible speed. It can quickly destroy enemy vehicles or structures, but struggles quite a bit against infantries. The lack of speed, combined with its incapability of attacking while it moves, really limits its functionality on many cases. However, the attack command can really somehow nullify that drawback, but still it is not as convenient as using the Rhino Tanks around enemy forces. Where the Apocalypse truly shines is against structures, since it's the only non-siege type unit that deals full damage to almost all structures. Therefore, it is a lot more efficient at bringing enemy bases down, whereas other vehicles struggle even against minor structures. Veteran status improves the Apocalypse to a point where it truly has no match. Its improved statistics and, more importantly, the better speed can play a significant role in negating one of its main drawbacks. On elite status is when the Apocalypse becomes an army on its own. The extra volley allows the Apocalypse to divide the attacks to adjacent targets, annihilating everything around it. With a great durability and a self-repair ability, you can keep the Apocalypse tank alive for many battles, and even challenge an entire base. It's quite remarkable that the Apocalypse can also attack earth targets. Even though it shares the same projectiles with the IFV, so it might miss fast-moving targets, they are a lot more powerful. Considering that air threats are not its main duty, the equipped anti-air missiles the Apocalypse has are simply a huge bonus and definitely not wasted. The biggest flaw we may find on the Apocalypse tank is that they basically can't offer you something entirely different than the Rhino tanks. Apocalypse tanks will always engage head-on-head with enemy vehicles and defenses, which means that they will always take damage, and considering their high cost and slow production, any destroyed Apocalypse is a significant loss, whereas throwing lesser tanks in a battle puts a lot less pressure to keep them alive. Obviously, in terms of raw power, they are unmatched, but raw power alone can only take you so far.
Location to sign the treaty with the Soviets. Per the general's orders,
it's good against air targets and infantry and other centers too. It's good against air targets and infantry and other centers, certain circumstances, and other centers, certain circumstances.